I'm gonna test if I speak. Right, if I can get people to turn their cameras off, thank you. Just a reminder to all participants, please turn your cameras off. Hello, everyone. want to remind people to make sure that you have your mics turned off as well as your cameras off. We will officially start our webinar. Hello and welcome. I am going to be the moderator for tonight's webinar. Welcome to this very expressive webinar, Tuned In, Worn Out. My name is Robin Holmes, and I'm here in Saskatoon, Saskatchewan. I work with ECFS, Early Childhood and Family Services, through Saskatchewan Deaf and Hard of Hearing Services, and I'll be moderating this evening's webinar. I would now like to do the land acknowledgement. We acknowledge that we stand on the land of Kanata, from the west to the east, and from the north to the south, all across Canada. We honor the diversity of Indigenous peoples and their contributions, including the resources, materials, trees, water, and so much more. Let us also remember that we have the opportunity to reaffirm our relationship with one another with respect, and we are committed to moving forward together. Once again, thank you. We also acknowledge the land we are now standing on today in British Columbia, Saskatchewan, and Ontario, as well as in all other provinces and territories across Canada. Thank you. This webinar is a collaboration of 3 different organizations: Deaf Children's Society from British Columbia, Silent Voice in Ontario, and Saskatchewan Deaf and Hard of Hearing Services. We wanted to make sure we could provide webinars to parents of deaf and hard of hearing children. And this evening we do have parents and professionals here. If you have questions, you can email and contact any of us with those questions at the email address below on that slide. Before we actually proceed with our presenters, there's a few things that I want to cover first. This webinar is being recorded and it will be posted on our website. When we send out our emails, there will be a link to click on to watch this, and also with the slides, those slides will be available for viewing as well. The next point I want to make is that this is a safe space for everybody, specifically for parents. And as professionals, we need to make sure that we provide a safe space for parents and listen to their comments and concerns. Now I'll be introducing Wanda and Aaron. And after that, when that is all done, we're going to wrap up. I'm going to just back up a bit. We will have a question and answer period, and then we will wrap up the seminar after the presentation. So if we're ready, we are ready to begin. I'd like to then now introduce Wanda Blackett and Aaron Green.
Oh, I don't see the PowerPoint. Do you see the PowerPoint?
Oh, I'll need to share it.
We wanted to show the audience the PowerPoint, correct?
Yes.
Perfect. Okay. Okay. Hello, everyone. Oh, I'm so thrilled that you guys are all able to join us. Thank you for joining this evening. Before we start, one of the things that I just wanted to let you know is that some of the communication that Wanda and I will have are sensitive, vulnerable, and our true life experience. Some of them might bring up some big feelings, but our goal is to make sure that we have the space for honesty, healing, and relationship. And as like Robin said, this is a safe space for discussion. There's no judgments here.
Exactly right. Aaron and I, we're just two human beings going on with our everyday life like everybody else here. And we're just sharing what our experiences are. It's very similar. And we notice that there's a lot of deaf and hard of hearing people who have the same experience. It's not identical, but there are commonalities in our lived experiences and journeys.
Mhm.
And that's why people have such a strong connection to this topic. And it's really important that we're talking about the experience and we're sharing our personal experiences with you today, just so that people understand what it might be like, whether it's parents, teachers, professionals, service providers, just to be aware of how a deaf and hard of hearing person is managing and navigating their life. And at the end, we'll open it up to questions because this is a safe space. So I just want to make sure that you feel free to ask those questions and we won't find that insulting whatsoever. Let's just dive right in.
All right, let's go. So I'm Erin, and my pronouns are she, her. I have dark curly hair, and I'm wearing some gold loop earrings. I have green eyes. I'm wearing a dark gray, s- greenish top with a
And
green
cardigan.
tan sweater. So I'm a deaf mom. I grew up in the oral space, and many of you are still kind of like many of you are still kind of unpacking my own relationship
Journey
with
with.
hearing, journey with hearing.
And I'm Wanda Blackett. And for people who have vision impairments, I am a Caucasian woman. I have brown, blondish, curly hair. I am wearing dark rimmed glasses. I was raised hard of hearing and later on developed an identity of being deaf. Before, I mean, like growing up, it was hearing impaired, hard of hearing, really unsure what the actual label was growing up. But now I'm a very proud deaf person. And that is who I am and who I identify as. But when I look back, it's a time to look back at who we are and how we grew up. So here is a look back about us.
So, Wanda, when you look back, when you see parents and teachers, how would they describe you? I was looking at the pictures and I was like a fun girl, adventurous, ready to ride my bike. What was like you?
Well, that's interesting because I grew up really, really shy, but everybody thought, "Ooh, Wanda, wow, you're an oral success and you can speak well and you can lip read well and all these things." But inside, I didn't have that confidence. I was a shy, awkward human being trapped in this body. And it's interesting because a few years ago, I was working with the deaf agency, and it so happened that my former itinerant teacher was there, and I hadn't seen them in years. And they came up to me and said, "Oh, I'm surprised that you're here working for a deaf agency. You grew up oral. I mean, you were an oral success, but now you're signing. Why did you opt for that?" And immediately I thought that was really interesting because I said, "Well, you've labeled me as an oral success." But inside, I felt like a failure. I felt like a failure because it was such a struggle and so much work. And I always felt I was falling further and further behind. But the other people were perceiving me as being an oral success. But it's an interesting dynamic in terms of perspective. It's like, who do you think you are?
Well, I feel really it's feels similar. So my skills, my abilities, my ability to talk, I mean, it was validated that I could talk and I was great and everything looked okay. I was the responsible one. But it's interesting how you talk about identity at that age, because I never thought about identity as to who I am. I just thought, okay, well, I'm Erin. I need my hearing aid, and that's it. I'm not different. I refused to accept that I was different. I didn't want to
Hmm.
because I already identified myself as different, but I hated being different. And I remember my parents telling me, and I was like, really? I did that. When I grew up oral in a public school. There was no support for me. My parents found an oral school program in Toronto, and so we were trying to get in there, but we had to fill out a paper for us before we moved there. Um, and the question was, "Are you disabled?" It's like, "No, I'm not disabled." And my parents put down that I was disabled. I'm like, "No, I'm not disabled. There's nothing wrong with me. What are you talking about?" And realizing that in order to get into that oral program, that you had to put disabled in order to get the support that you needed for your education. So I just didn't feel right about it. And that was the beginning of my journey. And I became more aware, and I went into the school program and everybody was hard of hearing. I was the only one that was deaf. I couldn't hear anything. And they all were like picking on me. I didn't understand. I couldn't hear people screaming my name, and everybody would look at me and like almost like deer in the headlights. I'm like, why is everybody looking at me? What's going on? And a hard of hearing girl behind me screamed my name, knowing that I couldn't hear. So it was just a way to like take advantage and make fun of me. And I was like, no, I'm not deaf. I'm not different. I refused to accept that. And it was really hard. I wanted to look like everybody else, be like everyone else. And it was tough. And so I tried to be the responsible one, tried to work hard to be the champ at everything and to succeed
Hmm.
and to
Hmm.
hide my deafness.
Right. It's the way you can pass the hearing person.
Yes. If you were not hearing, you weren't good enough. And it felt like there was no positive identity. And, look at the deaf person, look at there was no deaf role models and there was no opportunities. I felt so alone and I couldn't and didn't want to be different. I didn't want to drown. I needed to keep surviving and keep fighting and keep going. But no one knew that. Actually, I remember another example it was like, oh man. So because I was deaf and the only one, for some reason, it was like a negative if you were deaf. I remember at the oral school, the kids there, we would pick on and we found someone to blame. Oh, let's blame Aaron for something. And I had no idea. They'd tell the teacher, Aaron did it. Aaron did it. And they would call my parents and they were like, why are you getting into trouble? It's like, I have no idea. I don't know. And there was no one there to support me or fight for me.
Right. Nobody would advocate for you. Wow, that's a lot of responsible, and that's quite the struggle. It sounds like we got
And with
a lot in common.
identity and trying to figure out what's going on and looking around all the time and not noticing or recognizing that I'm deaf myself.
Right. So many things to work on. Before we move ahead, I just want to maybe ask our audience something. And do you mind just putting out question number one? As an audience, if you guys could answer this honestly as you can, just if you can answer, then submit your answer. That'd be great. I've
Me,
answered mine.
me too.
So, what was your answer?
Not until I was adulthood.
That's my answer too. Even though we both lived with fatigue, listening fatigue, we never knew what it was until we were adults. That's so interesting.
Yeah, because one thing that we share that's in common, our mom said, I wish we would have learned sign. I wish we had received that positive attitude about finding because we could have learned sign and spoke at the same time. So I wish there was some value to ASL at the time.
Exactly. With that. not knowing and you not knowing how to express things. So for me, I just withdrew because I was really shy. But now I'm so active in the deaf community and I can communicate. And my mom has noticed there was a shift in me and I'm a different person than I used to be. I'm involved with the community. I'm very active and she does have regrets that she didn't learn how to sign and she wishes that she could go back. I mean, of course they can't, and it's not their fault. I mean, our parents were doing the best that they could with what they knew at the time, but there's no blame there. But it's kind of heartbreaking when you put words to our experience, and that is life and it's our lived experience.
Oh, yes. Okay. So was there a comment? Sorry.
Yeah. I mean, now there's a label of listening fatigue. And when you have that, you have more power. I'm not just lazy. I'm not doing good enough. I'm not weak in what my skill set is. This is something that affects a lot of people.
For me, one thing was in college, I learned sign and I became really bitter. I didn't want to talk with my family. I felt, oh, to have to go to and see my family, it was so much work. So I didn't want to. And then my mom was like assertive and saying, no, my daughter's not happy and she wanted to connect with me. And she figured that out herself. She figured out how to sign. And then I remember my mom came to me and she's like, okay, I'm ready to sign now. And I just felt so overwhelmed. It was like, wow, it took so much courage to learn a new language and to admit,
Absolutely.
that humility, she
Mhm.
had to learn. And I really appreciated that about my mother. I valued that.
Well, thanks for everybody for responding to that first question in our survey. We'll collect the data and be able to reflect on it towards the end of our presentation. So, what is listening fatigue? Just take a read of the slide and you'll see that there's a definition. Did you want to explain that a little bit on that, Erin?
Yeah, so Wanda and I really talk about it. We thought that it would be good for me to talk about this because I was the person who grew up with the hearing aid. And so I would know more about what hearing fatigue looked like. And later, I got a cochlear implant, and hearing fatigue was different. With a hearing aid and a cochlear implant is different. It's not, it's more work. I mean, I'm completely deaf. And so there's a lot of noise, words, beginning sounds, end sounds. I couldn't identify those things, and I would have to look at people's lips and lip read. So it seemed to be very, very hard to catch that. But with the cochlear implant, um, I had to think about the pain, which wasn't comfortable with my CI. Um, and then to have on top of that, you had that thing on your head with magnets, and so they changed that, but it was still there and it was trying to work together. And also you'd have to receive what you would receive is clear, but it was a huge impact because you would hear that again and again in your head, like that shh, that kind of noise, and you're just feeling like, oh, and you're trying to hear everything and process and pay attention to all the sounds and trying to decipher what word it was they're saying while, with the hearing aid, you were trying to figure out what they're saying with no background noise. And then with the cochlear implant, it's different. And at the age two, I didn't know how to advocate for myself back then. And, advocating means making sure that I knew what I wanted. I didn't know what to say. Whereas then as an adult, I knew what to say, but I felt like, ugh, I'm the one that has to match them to make sure that they're satisfied. And so there was a lot of factors. And it all depends on what kind of device you had with the CI, with your age, with the environment. So yeah.
Well, I think it's really interesting that you're talking about, you know, a person who has the cochlear implant and that how it affects them and how they process sound and how it goes through their whole body. For myself, I was a hearing aid user, and that was the only experience that I had. But it would be a different challenge that I hadn't thought about. And with a hearing aid, when you have a hearing aid on, it doesn't correct all sound, it just makes the volume louder. It's not clear. You're still not hearing those same frequencies. So you have to train yourself to figure out what's being said and putting all the pieces together and trying to listen for sound and watch for the spoken word.
When we talk about a child, when you're expected to listen as a child, you're expected to pay attention, and you have a device, use it, and it's like, oh, it was never really, what's the word I'm looking for? Explicit. You have to work on it. It's so much stress, having to try and pay attention and watch people and focus on that. And people don't
Mhm.
realize, is it you're are we not just, even though we have a device, it doesn't mean that we can hear perfectly, and that there's so many different frequencies to sound. There's
Right.
high, low, and there's still stuff missing. You're missing something. It's not full access.
Right. For me, I can actually understand women more than men. With men, listening to men, I find it a
Oh,
struggle
and we're so
to understand them.
opposite. Oh, I love the low. I love the men.
Yeah, and I would often turn to a woman and say, "What did he say? What did he say?" I just there's something about that frequency that I just can't pick up and that tone.
I love how we're talking about with the different sexes. Like men have such a low sound, it's easier. But it was opposite with the cochlear implant. I could hear the women better, and the men were a bit harder. So it's interesting the difference there. And it all depends, of course. That's fascinating. I never even realized that. But it makes sense. And because we had different kind of hearing levels, different kind of audiograms.
Right. I mean, when I was growing up, with the hearing aid, I mean, it would be loud, but I still couldn't hear, and I thought there was something wrong with me. But I know that that's not the case because I can only hear certain sounds and certain frequencies. When you look at an audiogram, and now that I understand an audiogram, and you have the speech banana, right? And it talks about which vowels and which consonants that you can hear in that speech banana and what's clear and what's not clear. And not knowing that growing up is different. It's not just you put your hearing aid and all of a sudden you can hear better and all of a sudden it's this magical thing. It's not. It's all
Never.
about the vibration, the frequencies.
People need to understand that they're not nobody's going to have equal or the same kind of hearing. I feel like as I was growing up, like if you give somebody glasses, okay, now they're going to now they can see. It's different with hearing aids.
It is. It takes so much training. And then when you put a new set of hearing aids on, the first week, oh my goodness, it's so hard and it's so tiring. Everything sounds different. So you're retraining your brain to reinterpret those sounds. And it's always that ongoing struggle. So very interesting. Oh, we need to move on.
Let's go.
Oh, what is listening fatigue? Obviously, you need to look at the cognitive load. There's a lot of things happening where you're concentrating on following the information, filling in the gaps, reading between the lines. You also have to take into consideration environmental barriers, and you have to figure out what is the right environment. What is the impact of the background noise? Is it a group setting? Is it poor lighting? Or what's really bad is if I'm chatting and then somebody comes in and stands right in front of a window, then their face looks so dark, I can't lip read them. And it's like, move, I'm getting kind of blinded. And I used to just nod and smile, but now I'm like, please move. I can't lip read you when you're standing in front of a bright light or window. And a lot of people speaking, of course, talking about this at the same time, if we're talking about different frequencies, male and female voices, or sometimes if somebody's wearing a beard or a mustache, or people will cover their mouths as they're talking. It's like, please put your hand away from your mouth. And to remind people constantly, sometimes, if I'm chatting with friends and they're cover up, I just give them the stink eye and they're like, oh, okay. And then they, like that means put your hand out because people don't remember those things. But I can't forget because I can't get the information unless I can read their lips.
Yes, because you're the one doing all the work, not them. It's you.
Hmm.
It's you. You have to make sure that you're satisfied with their communication needs. Like we have to receive and respond to that communication, and they don't care that we have to work. It's not, it's not that they don't care. I shouldn't say don't care, but they're just too comfortable, right? They already have that access. And so they have absolutely no idea what it's like to be in our shoes. And somebody once said cognitive load is like if you think about three layers and you feel like all of them is like a puzzle. And with we have the full puzzle, we'll have the full picture. But there's a lot of pieces missing. And we're the ones who are trying to figure out what the picture looks like, trying to fill in those gaps and so that we can get that full picture, but it's still not clear. It's still not there. And so not understanding a different perspective. And so we just have to accept that. I mean, that's how it is. I mean, is that good enough and move on?
Well, I think that's a really good analogy, speaking of a puzzle. And one sometimes it's a small thing and it can really impact me.
Like
And I'm
what?
thinking one particular situation. Like if I'm chatting with a friend or if we're walking along or we go into a room and we sit down, once in a while a friend or family member will say, "Oh, oh," and then they move to my left-hand side because they know that's my better side. And sometimes people will do that. And that's just so nice. It's the small things that really make a difference because they are taking me into consideration. So that is validating. And, so it's really nice that they're trying to do something.
Interesting. I appreciate hearing that because it helps a little, but just that little bit of effort makes such a huge difference. It just makes you
It
feel so
sure
good.
does.
It's like, thank you. I don't feel like alone. We feel that connection with that person because we can count on them to be fully respectful, value, support, and accommodate. And one comment, I don't know if you fully read that comment that's on here. Did you add that already? Oh,
Exactly. So often people think, you put an implant in and they're basically hearing and life goes on and life will be normal, but it's not when you unpack it. There's a lot of investment that goes in and a lot of work and maintenance on the equipment. It's not instantaneous. It's not a quick fix.
wow. Yeah. Reading that, I was a little triggering for me. Um, like soon those who haven't identified as deaf, my parents were like, well, my parents were saying, yes, my daughter's deaf. And our doctor was like, no, 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 they're crazy. She's not deaf. Because I hadn't identified at that time. But once I got the hearing aid, my parents were figured out that there was a barrier, but the barrier was also biased. um, they had to, pick the audiology way. And so we went through AVT and the power of time and effort that put into committing to that AVT to go through that journey. And that's where we got the impression that, I'm okay. It doesn't matter what we pick and what we choose. It's important that that you speak. And that attitude was like, I wish it was more of a balance of other values, value me as a person. What do you want to learn about me? And I feel once that I identified, then it changed the dream. Oh, my daughter is hearing, and I dream that my daughter can be, a ballerina, or maybe she'll be a singer or musician or whatever it was that dream was. But once they found out that your daughter is deaf, it was like my my dream is that my daughter can speak. And the focus was so heavy on that.
Right. And it's
So
reduced to only
heavy.
being able to speak.
Yeah, that was the only thing that was important. And so why I'm talking with that in regards to, the
Listening
stress
fatigue.
that was everything in regards to that listening fatigue. It was, it's starting to develop the stress and the nervousness. And if I said something wrong, or if I didn't receive their message correctly and I, expressed something wrong, it wasn't just listening and how I'm going to respond to you, but the stress included on that because I was afraid that I was going to say something wrong was so heavy. And the pressure I felt because I knew everybody was looking.
Exactly, because when we talk about the third point on the slide, it says, what is the emotional impact? Because we are constantly paying attention, constantly aware of aware of our surroundings. You don't ever get a break. You're expected to listen and follow along and understand what's being said by everybody in the room. And if I misunderstand something, I reply incorrectly, then it's embarrassing or I get scolded. So there is so much stress, and that's such an emotional impact. And I grew up, like I said, I always avoided people. I would go kind of hide in my bedroom. I would hide in the library. I would find those quiet spaces. I would go into the corner at the library. It's like where I landed, so I could be alone and read. So I didn't have to be so fatigued by always having to process the information. And the anxiety that comes with that is so heavy.
Yeah, let's hold on to that because we're going to share that on the next slide. But first, I think we have a poll.
All right, Mana, do you mind putting up number two? Question number two. So what's your go-to survival strategy when you feel overwhelmed by sound or communication? So you can choose one of the five. So
Yes, I think there's five. Complete quiet, so no talking, no sound at all, just quiet, zen, visual or sign communication only. So a break from working as to trying to hear. The next one is comfort shows, watching TV, no work, no expression, no thinking, no anything, just watching maybe a comedy uh, or listening to music. Just immerse yourself. The next one is hiding under a blanket. Ah, no shame. Or I don't know. I'm still trying to figure it out. Oh, I'm struggling with answering this one myself.
well, I can give you the answer for me. I tend to just set myself in front of a television. And you'd think that, well, wouldn't that be the same? Wouldn't it be fatiguing? Well, I've got captioning on. It's not any work. I can read. I love reading. That's what I do for enjoyment. But if I'm communicating and lip reading all day long, I definitely just need to close my eyes and just have total silence and quietness.
Okay, because I was thinking it varies because growing up with oral, I didn't know what the other world.
I
Yeah.
just want to put up the slide.
Okay. I didn't know that there was a different world, different culture, different anything. I didn't know that. I felt growing up that I was just surviving. I guess, yes. Surviving to me would be, hmm. Now, remember, I was in a public school, didn't understand the teacher. So I would play with someone's hair, braid someone's hair.
Hmm.
Hmm. And so I would do something with my hands to keep my hand and my brain busy because I didn't understand. Everybody was talking. There was so much noise and nobody gave me a piece of paper. I just sat in the classroom with other kids and I would just grab someone's hair and start doing that. Lucky for me, whoever was sitting in front of me let me do that because I never asked.
They just were willing to take it, I guess.
Yeah. Oh, I just kind of violated their personal space. It's like, oh.
Well, maybe they liked it. I mean, funny that you mentioned that because when you look at surviving, I mean, I haven't really given a lot of thought because it was so long ago, but when I was in elementary school, there would be lots of classroom chatter going on. And I can remember that, when you had the pen, I had a weird, like it almost looked like a letter opener, it was a letter opener. And what I did with this pen, I flipped it around and I started scratching myself, like self-injuring myself. And I had scratches all up my arm. Sometimes I would draw blood, but I would just scratch at myself because I just disconnected from everybody.
Oh, it was something triggering. You needed to feel like you're in the present, feel that you were here, because everything is just noise. And, hey, hello, I'm here, recognize that I'm here. And it's just noise. And it was just, yeah, wow, wow.
Yeah, it's kind of tough when you look back.
And now what's in your survivor kit now? What does your survival kit look like?
Well, I feel like I don't really need so much of a survival kit. I'm able to talk to my family. I can express my feelings and what my experience was. And I feel that I have a supportive family and they respect how I'm feeling. I work with a deaf agency, so there's lots of easy communication. So, oh, sorry, my dog is in the background. But I just feel that it's a perfect environment for me, and I don't have that fatigue that I used to have. And if somebody starts talking to me, sometimes I'll indicate, well, I'm deaf. I will try to work with them, but I'll say, you need to look at me. I'm more assertive in advocating for myself. I don't feel like it's all on me to make sure that I understand this other person. So I advocate and fight for myself. Whereas before, when I was in the school system and going to university, like all day classrooms, I mean, it's boring. And I'm trying to get as much as I can and trying to lip read the teacher. And I was glad that I had a note taker with me. And then I mean, I wouldn't get that until afterwards. And then I get the notes and then read it. And then I would read things before going to class and try to make those connections
Oh, you're
and
smart.
always navigating. But when I do that the whole day long, I mean, with the subway and the bus and the train and everything else, it was a 3 hour ride. I was spent. I had massive
Wow.
headaches and I had to take my hearing aids off. It was just too overstimulating. I needed to close my eyes
Oh.
but that's also stressful because if I take my hearing aids off and I close my eyes, what
Mhm.
if I fall asleep? Like I won't know where I'm going to wake up, so I'm trying to unplug as I'm traveling home, but I'm paranoid that I'm going to miss something and I won't get off at my stop.
That's so scary. The unknown and being safe is important. Like what if somebody came up to me? That is so scary. Interesting you talk about being in college and your experience with that in the note taking. My experience was so different than that. I remember when I first arrived, I remember telling my parents, I don't know how to sign. I mean, I knew my ABCs and just basic sign, but everyone else is all signing and I'm just like, whoa, I'm trying hard to catch up and, dealing with English and then signing and it was just so difficult and it was hard to pick up and I it was like, when you go to another country, you have no choice but to learn a different language. And so I was just immersed in it. I had to learn. And I always tell people, about excuse my language, but it's, BS because I arrived at college and all the interpreters were signing. I mean, I had, note takers as well. And sometimes, I would watch the interpreter and I'd be getting tired. And so I'd read. I'm just so used to reading and how I would survive doing both going both between the interpreter and reading, but it was easy for me to leave and I understood what was, the excitement and what was expected and I got everything done and I went out and I partied and I chatted and I socialized and I felt like I missed out at those younger years. I mean, I didn't have that honest human connection to be able to chat. I had to work so hard to find that. And so now I could be myself, And at the same time as I was exploring, like, who am I? What kind of person do I want to be? What kind of, character traits do I want to have? And not trying to go off on listening fatigue, but it seemed there was no listening fatigue there. I was just who I was. It was like, oh, this is what I needed. It was like a fix that I needed so bad. And I didn't care about school. I mean, I stayed in school because I wanted to be part of that social aspect that was missing. And it was like, oh, but one thing that was really funny that I have to tell you, so I grew up in the oral world, and college, everything was all signing. There was no desire to connect with a hearing person at all. But after I graduated, I worked in a company with all hearing at the bank, and I still was afraid to advocate for myself. And I think it was because of that drama, that personal stuff that I had. It was like I already knew who I was. I knew who I was in a deaf environment. I had full access. I knew what to do. And I decided to go back to school to become a teacher of the deaf. And so while working at the deaf school all day, you know what happened?
What?
I wanted to speak. And I'm not kidding. I was
Oh, really?
craving for that hearing connection. I thought, oh my God, that is so strange. Like, what is this? You had to work so hard, but it was kind of part of who I was. And so I'd like to kind of go back and forth between two worlds.
And I think we grew up being ashamed of being deaf. So we always tried to cover it up. We wanted to look normal. And what normal is, I want to pass as a hearing person and not as somebody with a hearing loss. And then when you get involved with the deaf community and, we're signing, we're carrying on, and you have that deaf pride, what? You're part of both worlds. And it's almost feels like you have to choose between the two. And we should just be able to be proud that you can go between both worlds. That's who we are. And there's no shame in that.
No, there isn't. And I think being part of the deaf community gave me that confidence. I knew and found out how to advocate for
Absolutely.
myself, how to self-regulate.
Right. And to give myself permission to
Right.
advocate for myself,
Yes, that's
to
it.
take a
Permission.
break and that we have what we need to be comfortable.
Wait, yes, control, that permission, that privilege, that
Hmm.
permission. Whoa. Like have that permission to have a break, or that permission to say, I don't understand what you're saying, or that permission to say, I don't want to participate in this big family chat. I never was able to do that. And now that I'm older and, I can say no thanks, I don't want to join that right now. There's a big celebration for Passover because we're Jewish, and our parents want, my to get all involved with me there. And it's like, oh, I don't. There's like everybody just talks, and there's big words, and I just want like just a small, simple, And I'm lucky my husband and my kids sign, and and that's all I want. That's all I need. But the big family get together, everybody's talking over each other, and I'm asking so many questions, and people are asking me questions. I get so nervous. And what are people saying? I don't want that. I don't
And
want to look like a fool.
right. And you want to say, is the
But that
stress worth it?
key word that you said there, Wanda, was permission. It's the permission.
Hmm.
Wow. Wow.
Okay. So let's try something just for fun. Look at this picture. Obviously, there's a party going on. Everybody's having conversations, and there's this person who's deaf, hard of hearing deaf, and they're exhausted. You can see they're exhausted. They're kind of hiding away. But how would you caption this cartoon? It could be serious, it could be funny, it could be poignant, sad. Put that in the chat. How would you caption this particular picture? Yeah, is it
It's
time to
time.
go yet?
Is it time to go yet? Yeah. Ugh, itching.
Versus, are we there yet? It's not, are we there yet? Is it time to go?
Worn out. Yes. I love the what is it time? Come on, is it time to go? Let's go. Is it time to go?
Yeah, it's interesting to see people's responses. And I think it's really important that people look into what the actual experience is and, read some of these thoughts and how we caption it. Some might be very impactful, some are kind of comical.
I'm not ignoring you. I'm just on listening fatigue coma. Oh, I love that. I never heard that one before. That one
I
was
love
cool.
it, love it. Yeah, coma. It's a lot of work. I mean, when you do that for 2 hours, it's like, oh my God, I need a break. Yeah, it's like, okay, I reached my daily word limit. Try again tomorrow. That would be my captioning. Oh, if you need me, I'll be emotionally buffering. Yeah, needing time to just settle down. Dear brain, abort mission, retreat to the couch. This isn't a party, this is a listening obstacle course. Definitely our everyday challenge. I see some more comments. Beautiful. Thank you, everybody, for participating. Yeah, I love the dialogue here.
Someone said waiting for dessert. Yeah, that would be me. Foodie. Oh, that is so me. I don't care about conversation. Can we get done and get on to the food? Oh, that's how I trigger myself.
Well, for sure. And then it's, oh, I can't talk. My mouth is full.
I remember at family events, my grandmother, this is like it's Baba, she would host a big family dinner and we would all, everybody was talking and I would go and help my Baba. And, because I'd be like the perfect grandchild because I had no other choice. Everyone was too busy talking. So what am I going to do? So I
That
would
is
clean and
so
clean and I really
funny.
loved it. I needed something, I needed a role. I needed something that was important. I didn't want to go and chat, and I felt like, it was a blessing in disguise because nobody would help Baba. It was just me. My aunts would come, every once in a while, but no, I was focused on helping Grandma clean, Baba clean. So yeah, I remember that.
And it's really funny because when I think of my sister, like we have a huge family get together on an annual basis, all the aunties and uncles and cousins, we have a reunion and we do this. So every year, like my sister goes, and I always opt out. And my sister this year is like, oh no, they really want to see you. I'm like, I don't feel comfortable. I don't tell my family why. My sister knows, but I said, she's like, well, like it'll be a big party. They're family. They love you. And I try to, I'm not comfortable there. And then my niece, there was, you know, my niece's baby shower, and she said, "Well, you hosted that, and I hosted that, and you came, and or I hosted that, but I hosted it, yes, but I could keep myself busy. I wasn't necessarily socializing with everybody. I had jobs to do.
You
I
were in
was in
control.
control. Absolutely. I could explain the games, I could do whatever. I was the one talking. I didn't have to follow the lead of anything. I was leading, so I didn't have to deal with that fatigue of listening and deciphering. But if I go to a party and I sit there and then I'm expected to communicate with everybody, then I feel like I just get lost in that. And it's just too anxiety ridden for me. A deaf party is different. A deaf party, bring it on, because I don't have that anxiety because we can communicate so easily.
I don't mean to interrupt, but what if you hired a sign language interpreter? Now, why just an idea. I'll never forget my, let me see, I think it was my cousin's wedding. And my parents were like, come on, it's, be part of the family. It's a family event. And I was like, oh, I don't want to go. And my parents said, oh, no, we'll bring in and get a high pay for a sign language interpreter. They're like, nope, no question. We'll do it. My mom was already advocating for me before, like, I mean, champ. And, and we'll cover the cost. We'll get a sign language interpreter. And, my parents said that they'd pay. And I was like, oh, okay, all right. Oh my gosh, I had so much fun. The first time I really understood and could connect. And so that's where our connection grew because they understood me and I understood them. It was the best. And so it was so helpful to have that interpreter. I never thought like my parents would ever hire an interpreter. Oh, it was
Oh,
amazing.
generous.
Yeah, and then I mean things changed, of course, but that was one of, like when I got involved in college, I was like, "Oh yeah, I'm big deaf and I just sign and that's it." But after college, I was a little more flexible with things and a little more lax with stuff. But yeah, they hired and paid for an interpreter. My mom never complained about the cost. They just thought it was important for my daughter to feel happy. She's feeling disconnected. And she didn't like me feeling that disconnect. So just an idea for a family get together.
Yeah, my family. I mean, when I think about my best friend, I mean, I think years ago, I mean, we at her wedding, she found an interpreter for me, my best friend, like she's hearing, but I'm coming in as the maid of honor, but she brought an interpreter for me. And that was so amazing.
Oh, what a special
And she
friend.
also invited a deaf friend of mine too. I mean,
Oh, and they
they
didn't
knew
feel
each
alone.
other, but she thought, well, wouldn't it be nice that I would have somebody to easily communicate with? I mean, yes, the interpreter was there, but she also had somebody that she could speak with directly, and she covered the cost of the interpreting. So I thought that was very, really, very thoughtful of her.
Oh, that recognition. Look at that. You didn't have to explain anything to her. That is very special, that friend who identifies that, making sure that you have what you need.
Well, for sure, because if there's any kind of barrier with her, she has got my back. She advocates for me like nobody's business. It's like I've got somebody in my corner.
Oh, she's got a deaf heart, I tell ya.
Okay, we better move on to the next slide.
Okay, so we usually put on a character, right? They don't really know who we are in the true spirit of who we are, what kind of person I am. But it doesn't matter. What was important is that you could speak. Oh, wow, Erin can talk so great. She's got straight A's. She's on the honor roll. But who am I? What kind of person am I? What do I like? What are some of the things that I can do? And I remember one thing that was really struck a chord for me was when I graduated college. I felt so amazing. I was ready to live my life, and my parents gave me for graduation a
My dad.
guitar. My dad gave me for a guitar. I was never interested in music. I was deaf. I didn't want to, I didn't have that connection to music, but it was a guitar. It's like, oh, you're successful in speaking, you're successful in graduating from college. Now you can be immersed in music. Here you go. And it's like, no. It was like, no, I struggled my whole life. No, thank you.
And that's really sad because people don't actually ever find out who we are because we put on that mask and we show the world this different person because we copy and we mimic our surroundings because we want to fit in and we can't be our authentic selves. We kind of go with the flow, we roll with the punches, and we do that for the group. And if people are laughing, then ah, ha, 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 you can laugh. And if people are nodding your head, then you can nod your head, right? You kind of go with the flow, but I don't always know what people are talking about or what they're laughing about. I don't know. I just don't want to stand out. So I follow what they're doing. I don't really have an opinion, but I have this persona that I'm following along, but they don't know who I really am. And, how do I even show them who I am? It's like we're acting.
Well, your job is to make their lives easier,
Hmm.
just to make sure that they're happy. You don't matter, right? To them, do they understand? That it's make sure that they're understanding, and then that's it. Your job is done. This, okay, let's just go with the flow. It doesn't stress them out, and you're just avoiding that eye roll.
Exactly. Like, oh, do you mind repeating yourself? And you get that, oh, and it's like, and they say it again. And I'm like, I still don't understand. I'm not going to ask them a third time because they're going to be furious. I'm like, oh, okay, well, thank you. Ha, ha, okay. And I just drop it. It's just not worth trying to understand because they're already getting agitated with me. And I'm like, because I want to understand them, I'm doing all the work and you're annoyed. It's sad. You'd almost think it should be the other way around.
And feeling when you're growing up, you're given that kind of uh, that message just to make sure that you understand them, but don't stress them out. It's, it's a contradiction, a perfect juxtaposition. You want this, but you want to if you completely want it, then you have to play games for it. You have to play games in order to survive, play games to be a hearing person. And that's for them. It's not for me. It doesn't make me happy. Are my feelings not valid? And so I think that's why I'm like just really giving it out right now, is because I hate, having that persona, and I hate it when people are eye rolling me, and then that affects me.
Absolutely. The message you get is that, oh, I'm a failure because you want to be labeled as the successful oral kid. But inside, I mean, I feel I missed so much. I felt like I was so far behind, and it was so much work and the headache of trying to follow and track information. But I didn't want them disappointed in me. I wanted my parents to be proud of me. So I put on this whole kind of persona, like I'm fine, I'm happy, everything's good. I'm always acting, but inside, I was so unhappy. And in the evening, as I would think of things and mull through my day and just thinking about misunderstanding something, saying the wrong thing, but in the evening, I was replaying those tapes. I didn't understand. What if they said this? What if they said that? I thought they said this. And did they think that what I said? I just replayed all of those scenarios in my brain. What could they have said? So even when I'm supposed to be relaxing, I'm stressing out about all the information that I got wrong.
And there's that listening fatigue again, because you're thinking about it over and over again. And you're not disconnecting from it. You're trying to think of what's the proper way, what was the proper approach, what was the proper, and thinking it over and over and over is, okay, how could I have responded to like what the person, right? Like thinking about it over and over. What's the appropriate thing? What did I miss? What was the story of the skill that I missed? And we're taught how to speak properly and how to receive, but we're not shown how to be authentic, and people misunderstand that, and they say that it's okay. Like, we didn't know that with hearing people misunderstand all the time, but I thought, no, because I'm deaf, I'm the wrong one.
Right. And I assumed it was all on me, but I didn't know. I didn't know that it wasn't on me. I didn't understand that to be true. But anyways, we need to move on.
Okay, so you need to share the first time you were so excited. You have to share that story.
All right, I told Aaron, but I'll have to share it with everybody here. When I was in elementary school, my first experience was closed captioning, was going to a deaf and hard of hearing event where, everybody's singly placed and they brought us all together to have a social get together to meet other hard of hearing kids. But it was really weird because we were so socially awkward because we were always singly placed, but we went to watch the TV program. They brought in the TV and they had the captioning. and there was captioning there. And I thought, what? Wow, I can read, I can follow the movie. And the movie, oh my gosh, I still remember this, was Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure.
What a fun movie.
It was so funny, but that was my first exposure of seeing captioning. And I'm thinking, oh my God, I felt like I had a key to unlock the mysteries of television. And when I was done, I got home and right away I turned the TV on. I think, how do you turn the captioning on? How do you turn the captioning on? I was trying to figure this all out. And finally, I got the captioning to work out on our TV and I had access. And it was like, whoa, and whenever I had the
What a
time, I would do
difference.
that. Like when I was younger, I didn't know that was even an option, but it opened up a whole new world for me. I mean, technology can
Yes,
work in our favor when it works.
that. And for me, my first, well, raw experience, I went to a movie, Life is Beautiful. It was about the Jewish Holocaust. And I was like maybe 13 to 15, a teenager anyway. And very private about my feelings. And my parents was like, "Oh, this is this great movie. It's released internationally. It's in the theater. Erin's going to be thrilled. She can finally get access and she can read it." And I was like, "All right." So I didn't really know the background of what the movie was about. They just said, "Oh, it said Life is Beautiful." That's it. I had no idea about anything, the war, nothing. And then that's it. I just bawled. I had huge, ugly crocodile tears. And I'm like, oh my gosh, why am I crying? I can't control my emotions. And it was the first time that I understood. There was a little boy, and the dad was like coming up with different ideas to make sure that the little boy was in the middle of the war, to making him think that he was in the middle of the game. And then at the end, he won the game. And just, oh my gosh, just the emotions.
Wow.
It was something I would recommend for a child who hasn't had full exposure to captioning. It was so emotional. And there was a lot of, like just receiving, and it was mind blown.
Well, I feel a little bit better about Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure. You know, that makes me feel a little bit better. Yours was very traumatizing. Whew. Huh. It looked like somebody was drawing on my screen. I saw that red scribble there. Weird. Okay, anyways, talking about technology and accessibility. Captioning is great when it works, whether you're at the movies or watching TV sometimes. I mean, the negative too is if it's live captioning or if it's auto captioning. Some people think, oh, auto captioning is fantastic. It's good enough. It's not. Like sometimes it's okay, other times it's questionable. Or if I'm watching the news, like during COVID, and the premier would do these presentations before they brought in the interpreters, and they had the auto captioning, and I was trying to figure out what they were saying, and there's so many mistakes in the captioning and so many
Oh, so
omissions,
much
and I'm trying to
missing.
figure out what's going on. So that was a struggle trying to understand. I mean, it's not reliable. I mean, if it's live or automatic, it doesn't always work. And then when we look at assistive devices, if we go to a movie theater and they have that special stand that you can have the captioning on that little screen in front of you, or if you go to the theater, or if you went to an opera or comedy show, like when I go to a comedy night with a friend, I make sure I get a hold of them like weeks in advance to say, hey, do you have listening devices? And do you have like an FM system? Do you have whatever you have? And it's like, great. And you go there, and I'm gonna get there. I go to sit down, I turn it on, and the battery is not charged. And it's gonna start right away. It hasn't even started, and there's no battery power. And then they're saying, okay, well, there's 5 or 6 5 or 6 of them, but somebody forgot to plug it in to recharge the
They're all
devices.
dead. Or they say, here, here's a free movie or free popcorn.
Well, yeah, but if the captioning didn't work, oh, sorry,
Well, they should give
come
you
again.
something.
And it's like, no, I planned my whole evening around this. I go to watch a movie and then I can't have access because on the website it says there's captioning, and they're like, oh, no, there's no captioning here. And it's like, okay, why would you advertise? And it's like, well, here's a free ticket for something.
And that's part of listening fatigue, working to be mentally prepared, meant to be prepared for what could happen. Even though you did everything early, it's just like, oh.
Right. I got everything all pre-planned and it still doesn't work. We plan our lives around our accommodations. It's tough.
Now, Wanda, sorry to interrupt. Someone has just made a caption or is a question that I think is important to mention. The question was, Amelia asked, I notice a common theme for deaf and hard of hearing who grew up oral. Why is caption not fully accessible in the school system, and where the deaf schools already have like those devices already? We're from the 1900s. That sounds like a
Yeah,
long
I just
time
look
ago.
young.
Legally, captioning wasn't ready. I remember my parents had said my dad drove to Buffalo to purchase the closed captioning box. It was this big, huge box that he brought. And it became legal to start having like a high school or something to have more accessibility to closed captioning.
And also, we have lots of technology now, but with school materials, there's low budget or they're educational materials, and they're often not captioned, or they pull something off of something on the internet, it's not captioned, or if it's captioned, then they use an automatic captioning program. And I would challenge you, find a YouTube video, any YouTube video, and put the auto captioning on, take the sound off, just read the captioning. That's
Oh,
it.
what a good idea.
Because you're gonna, if you have the commas and the questions, exclamation marks, they're not there. It's one run-on sentence. There aren't breaks. There's no natural breaks. I mean, there's some that are better than others, and they do vary. Sometimes they have the wrong interpretation of the word, or there's no punctuation. Try reading that constantly. And you have a good command of English. You have all that access. You would think that it should be pretty easy. Imagine if you're struggling with English, are you going to be able to put all those pieces together and understand what's being captioned? Nice
Well,
comment.
we just gotta look at the time.
So once again, I mean, talking about hearing devices, we talked about hearing aids and cochlear implants. They're not like glasses. It's not like you put your glasses on and you see clearer. You put your hearing aids, you don't hear clearer. We still have to fill in all the missing information. It's not a perfect solution. It it works somewhat, but there's a lot of work. It's assistive, but it's not a one size fits all. It's not a solution. All right, Erin. So you were talking about being in the deaf community, learning ASL. How did you find that process?
So my identity happened in college. So, once in a while I learned ASL and I connected to develop that and I had some friendships. But once I identified as deaf, I still struggled with different groups. There's like the deaf elite, deaf, those who had deaf families, who grew up in the deaf schools. I didn't grow up in the deaf schools. I grew up oral, was okay. Like I had to identify and accept that. But I really love the deaf community, and I've learned what was important to me, which is sign language. And I have access to both sign and speaking. I mean, sometimes I still love speaking. Sometimes I just love to sign. And I'm very, very fortunate that my husband signs. My husband's hearing, and our three children, I have three of them, and they're all CODAs. Um, with
With Selective hearing.
selective hearing, and they all know how to sign. Um, and I've taught my boys how to hear to my like how to pay attention to me, and sometimes I'll close their eyes and it's but anyway, but through that college experience I realized that hearing fatigue, that fatigue, I didn't want to have to grow up with that. I didn't want to have to deal with that with the rest of my adult life, with that listening fatigue, especially in my home. I wanted it to be somewhere that I can feel safe and relaxed and where I'm visible. So where I go home, there's the four of us, we all sign wherever, and anyone's included. I'm always included, even though I'm not part of their conversation, they still sign, which I feel very fortunate that they do that. You know, um, it's not if they might not be great, but it's not my place. And it's funny because when I first met my husband, he didn't want to talk for the first 3 months. He had no idea. And he was interested in learning how to sign. So he went to Gallaudet and took an ASL class, joined a deaf club. And so for the first 3 months, um, I didn't have to talk.
He
He
didn't
just
know I could even
he
speak.
didn't even know that I could speak. So it's important to have that right attitude, the right attitude towards deaf, have that value and have that accessibility. It was like, oh, it was so, so important to me. And so finally I have a place where I can find home, call home. I don't need a break. I'm just here at home and I just have that awesome calmness. What about you? What do you identify
Oh,
like?
that's really beautiful. I mean, as I said, I grew up oral. I didn't learn any sign until I went to university. And when I was in university, in with the course selection, I had one more to take in the semester. So my student advisor said, "Oh, I noticed you're hard of hearing. I'm wondering, would you like to take an ASL course?" I'm like, "Oh, yeah, yeah, sure." I signed up for that and it filled up my schedule. I started going to this ASL class, and I had to try and take in all this information. But then, like with all these other classes, I was always struggling. But in the ASL class, it was a different experience. I felt that I didn't have to work so hard. It made sense. My classmates, we were all on par. We were all in the same boat. We were all learning the same language. I didn't have to take things in auditorily. I felt I was a little bit advanced because I had already trained myself to use my vision and be able to take in information visually. And I felt I could participate fully in that class for once. I didn't hesitate. I felt like, oh, that was new for me. And I learned how to sign and I picked up more and more sign and I really, really enjoyed it. And I I struggled with my identity and being deaf and labeling myself, but I remember there was one class in that ASL course that I was taking. There was a documentary that we were watching and it had deaf kids and they were showing these deaf kids. I remember watching this with the rest of my classmates and they were talking about their experience and they were talking about their emotions. And when I saw that, it triggered something within me. It's like I can so relate to that experience. So during class, I mean, I bawled my eyes out through this and I didn't care because this documentary was telling my story. I grew up being the only one and nobody got it. I was always holding everything in. And here was this documentary where people were talking about it. And I just felt like something was released and that burden
That burden
was
was released.
lifted. Absolutely. And I felt that this is my community. I want to learn how to sign. And I started working with the deaf agency and I thought, I'm going to do more of this. And I felt so welcomed and accepted for being me. I didn't have to act and be something I wasn't. I was my authentic self. I didn't have to fit to somebody else's mold. And I just felt that the burden was lifted. Didn't have to make sure that I was communicating so other people could understand me.
All that work that you have to do in order to get, making sure that other people understand. And so finally you're able to just be you and to just be who you are.
And I was still learning it, but I wasn't ashamed of making mistakes. Like I was learning, I was signing, and people were so supportive.
Do you think you were always shy, or do you think it was just if you had full access, you'd be different?
Well, when I really look at it, I think maybe it wasn't even shy. I was probably more scared, more embarrassed. There's a lot of fear in trying to figure out who I was. If I look back, I think it was the fear. I was
That's
a
it.
different person.
Yeah, that's it. It's interesting how people label us. You know, they have that identity for you or that label for you, but we're still trying to figure it out. And maybe you were shy. You just didn't have accessible to that full language. You didn't have the people who were the same. You know, you were the only one. And so now that you're finding that,
Right. And this leads into our next slide, coping skills. You know, Looking back, how did you cope? What were some of the things that you did?
well, I remember you and I sharing, we were conversing with, hearing people who were driving, who's the driver. And we were driving and we were controlling where we're going. And we didn't really give anybody else a chance to ask any questions. We would avoid that as much as possible, right? We would just blah, 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 and then off we go.
Exactly. And when you're one on one, you can kind of control the conversation, but it gets harder when there's more people. So I would avoid situations where there's more than one other person. So if I find a loner, then I can talk with this loner and it's safe because I can manipulate or control the conversation. For somebody who's popular, avoid them like the plague because there's always going to be other people around them. I'm like,
We're
that
opposite.
is not where I want to be.
Oh, you're the smart one. I wish I would have thought of that because I remember in high school, most people, the popular one, I was like, oh, I want to be like them. I want to be the most popular one. But I was like, I had no idea. But it's like, oh, darn. Um, so whatever that person would do, I would copy their behavior and be like, oh, okay. And I would play. It's interesting. Um, it was who I'm friends with today and who I connect with. And they're like, oh, you're such a good actress. Nobody notices that you just play along. And they said, oh, I noticed, but you just kind of go along and you don't say what you're scared. And I'm just so happy for that because so I don't embarrass myself.
Well, I think as deaf people, we are quite the actors, but we
Exactly.
do need to keep plugging along. But before we go to the next slide, Nana, can you come up with question number 4, please? Oops, I missed one. No, I need number 4. I just realized we missed number 3, but we want to get to number 4. We'll just skip number 3. We're going to go right to number 4. Yeah. So it asks you, what do you think the symptoms are of listening fatigue? Headaches or brain fog, eye strain, zoning out, daydreaming, being moody or withdrawn, feeling physically drained, muscle tension, or none of these? What do you think?
Maybe we should add all of the above.
I just tick them all off.
Perfect. Some people said all of them. It's like, yes.
Exactly. You have won the prize. It is all of them. I'll just give people a moment to just look at this particular slide on recognizing the signs. Erin, I don't know about you, but for me, I would say that I've experienced probably all of these things, but the top one for me is the headaches. Whether I was in high school, university, just trying to socialize, at the end of the day, I always had such a pulsating headache. I felt that happened on a daily basis, like a migraine. I thought there was something wrong with me, like there was something physically not right. I thought there's something wrong with my brain, and that I would always get these headaches. And then years later, being involved with the deaf community and signing, I just noticed that, oh, I wasn't getting these
Right.
migraines. I wasn't having these headaches. Every once in a while, I get a little flare up, maybe once, twice a year, I would get a migraine, but it was so rare. It's so rare now. It was a daily basis before. It's just I'm not working so hard at taking information through my ears and through my eyes so that those symptoms have totally decreased. And with that listening fatigue, like we didn't have that label, but now we have that label of listening fatigue and doing the research on it. It's like, that's me. That's me. That is so me. And that's why I'm so fatigued. And that's why I had those headaches.
I didn't have headaches. Now, as an adult, I get with the cochlear implant, I get headaches more often. But before, I didn't. And I think for me, it was just like, oh, you're just so used to just going on. I just felt heavy. I felt like there was such a weight on my shoulder, and it just kept being on there. And I was living in fear, no confidence, no support. I didn't feel supported, didn't feel valued and loved. I didn't feel, that recognized. And so I just felt blah because the pressure was on me because I had to, pass, you know, pass to be able to listen and understand what they're saying and respect hearing people's space. But where was that respect for me? I felt so bad and terrible and anxiety, and that anxiety was so high. And I started smoking, if you would believe this, when I was 12.
At 12,
I wish I had the support. I wish I had a therapist or somebody to talk to me, to say, it's okay. Not everybody understands. It's okay. Everybody's the same. It's okay. Everybody has to ask again. Maybe I wouldn't have felt so heavy and so alone, but there was no explanations, no one telling me that. So the anxiety was just, oh, it was so bad. And I was so withdrawn.
right. And there isn't an easy solution. And how do we learn to advocate for ourselves and how do we allow ourselves to have those feelings?
And I'm just thinking, as parents, how do they recognize that my child is going through this
Listening
fatigue?
fatigue.
What is it like? Like, it could be so it's so easy to mask. So you need to make sure that the child is making sure the parents are happy. They just want to make sure that they keep their parents happy. It's just a natural thing. It's not right, it's not wrong, it's just what kids do. So what do you need to do to make sure that the child has their space, and that they can talk out loud what their thoughts are, what my thinking is. I don't have the mood to continue with this heavy conversation. I need space.
Right. And I think they have to lead by example.
Beautiful. Exactly. That's it. To make sure that the child understands what you're saying, they have access to sign. And I think everyone needs to learn how to sign.
Right. I mean, I'm happy that I can use my speech, but I also wish that I learned ASL so I'd have access to both languages growing up. I felt that I missed out on so much because learning ASL as an adult, you can't go back and learn that. I had dealt with the anxiety issues, the social skills, and the lack of development of social skills. I can't go back and recreate that. I just wish that all those opportunities were there and I had languages, both languages.
Okay, so I need to say something. It might be strange, but it's honest. I really didn't feel like connected with, I just felt more myself where in the bathroom because I could talk to myself in the mirror, to be
Really?
honest.
What does that look
Yeah,
like?
I would just have a conversation with myself. Like, I just spoke freely, just having that conversation without the fear.
Oh, it's weird you said that because I didn't use a mirror, but I still talked to myself. I had full-on conversations and I would reply to myself.
Yes, that's it. I love it. I love it. And I needed it.
Right.
And I
I
re
needed to know that I was being heard and listened to. And
and I got caught by my parents and they were like, "Why are you talking to yourself?" But I just felt so free that I was able to, speak to myself. There was no judging, there was nothing.
right, you can't misunderstand yourself.
Right? And when I look back, I'm like, why? Like nobody could watch me, right? And it's like,
Oh, so we had the same
ah,
experience.
I could just feel and be myself and have that imaginary friend, maybe. I don't know. I mean, maybe that's not a bad thing. And maybe it's was safe and helped me get through life.
And I think sometimes it's cathartic because you can release it and you're not holding on to all that inner pressure.
Exactly.
Interesting. You know, and just looking at, our solutions now, like what is it that we can do? So, strategies and interventions.
Yeah, we need to talk about some of those. For me, being social and the culture support is just so huge. I needed it. That culture identity, it was ingrained in me. It was in me. Even though I didn't grow up with the deaf culture, I had it. And I wish I had that growing up because I think it would have helped me understand a lot of reasons why behind some of the things.
Hmm. And often there's a situation. It may not be me, but if there's something I'm struggling with, it's not my fault. But that learning how to advocate for myself. For me, it's advocacy.
Right. And speaking about advocating, I didn't like when people advocated for me. I didn't like that. I would rather see people advocate for themselves, and then I would learn how to advocate for myself. Having people advocate for me, I just made me feel so tiny.
Well, right, because then you have this learned helplessness and you have to totally rely on other people to do this advocating that somehow you're not given the wherewithal to be able to advocate on your own. And then people just take that over for you and you get thrown into the mix. But how do we encourage kids to advocate for themselves? Like, be honest, tell me how you're feeling. Be honest so I can support you. Are you not comfortable? Say it. But the
Yeah, the role
expectation is
model.
I have to be involved. I have to do this. And it's like, oh, okay. It's like we have no choice. People are directing our lives. We never knew that if you're not comfortable, you can ask for something. You can ask for help or whatever.
I didn't like when somebody told me that. I guess it depended on the individual, but it's
Mhm.
important to have that role model. If somebody would model what that would look like and I could see it, I'd be like, "Oh, okay, I can do that for myself." Or somebody telling me what to do is like, "No, no, no, no. I want to see you do it first. I want to see how it works. If I don't see you do it, then why should I have to do it?" Right? And then that just makes me feel more alone.
Exactly. I think we need to have role models so you can see somebody else going through that. It's okay to advocate as a deaf person. Like, if they can do it, I can do it.
Oh, it's so important to have that role model.
All right, so talking about strategies and intervention, I mean, we've got the five listed. We have the environment and setup. It could be as simple as sitting in a circle because sometimes in classrooms you have people in rows, and that's my worst nightmare. I remember thinking, getting to class, I wanted to sit at the very front so I could at least see the teacher, which is great. But when other students are asking questions behind me,
Oh
I don't even
yeah.
know who's speaking. I have to figure out who they are. And by the time I figure out who they are, they're done talking. And then I have to go back to the teacher and figure out what they're talking. And I miss so much. So I have to decide either to watch the teacher or watch other students. So yeah, very challenging. And if you sit in a circular arrangement, that makes sense.
Right, a circle instead of having like rows. And there was one teacher that decided that. It was Ontario College way back in the 1900s. I'm old. But I had an instructor, an English teacher, Mrs. Pashby. I still remember her name. And she was the only teacher that made sure that there was complete access and that everybody understood. But we all had everybody in a circle. And we changed it all the time. I was the only deaf person in that class. But like other classrooms, we always had it in rows, but it was so important to have that circle.
Mhm. There's just so many ways that you can set up the environment that makes it more accessible. Communication access, that's really important to make sure that we're encouraging turn taking. Because if there's people talking, often they're overlapping and you miss what the other person's saying. You can't track the conversation. And it's easy for me to know if I can track somebody says something and we're going to another person, then I can get a chance to look at them. But if they're in a heated discussion, they're overlapping their conversations, it's very challenging.
It will happen, especially when people are excited or over emotional. It's really hard to control. So what you can do in that situation is just kind of if it's goes out of control, just say wait and then explain afterwards. I'm okay with that.
Right. And give yourself the permission to step back from that conversation.
Yeah, that too.
Right. And the next topic is social and cultural support. So looking at people who are signing and people can understand who I am, they understand we have similar struggles. And Aaron and I, we had met recently and we were chatting and sharing, and we were just feeding off of each other. And we had an instant connection when we were chatting because we could so relate to each other's experience. That's how I felt. I felt like it was amazing.
Oh, I'm so lucky because I was so nervous because I've never met Wanda before. Didn't know what to expect. I had no idea and I was so nervous. And then I met her and I was like, why was I so nervous? She's so easy to talk to and we just understood each other immediately. That connection was there.
Exactly. Yeah, we had that common experience. Yeah. Sorry. And self-care. Oh,
Self-care and fatigue management. Yes. It's okay like to see what self-care looks like. You have to decide because everyone's different. You have to figure out what works for you and what doesn't work for you. Like for myself, I like to read books, you know, maybe others don't. Or you could offer different ideas to try, like going out for a hike. My son, who's 4, he says, Mom, if I feel frustrated, I'm going to go outside. I'm like, okay, well, thanks for telling me, and that's what he does for his self-care.
hmm.
And maybe if you see, your son or daughter, if he's, if you're feeling angry, this is what my self-care looks like when I'm feeling angry, and you can show it. Or you can, keep the conversation short and just to the point. What's the goal? What are you hoping to achieve out of that situation? And trying to make sure that the vocabulary isn't too big, more than 5 syllables. Keep it short as possible.
Right. And looking at advocacy and boundaries, it's really important that I need to know that I don't have to satisfy everyone else. If they're depending on me to solve their communication issues, I can have boundaries. I can protect myself with those boundaries. That was a hard lesson to learn. And I struggled with that because I used to always say, I'm great, I'm great, I'm great, and put that persona of everything is fine. But I needed to figure out how to create boundaries. There's just so many different ways of doing that, so many different strategies, but it's food for thought for you to contemplate on what works good or what strategies might work in your particular situation. Okay, reflections. We have poured out our souls for you today. You have heard a lot of raw information from us, but not everybody has the same experience. Not every hard of hearing person has the same experience. Not every deaf person has the same experience, but there are similarities.
We live in a world that is not completely accessible. And are we seeing a change? Oh, of course we are. It's going to get better. And just thinking about the 1900s, I keep thinking back, oh, 1900s is so long ago. But no, but back then we didn't have a lot of things. We didn't have, access through the telephones or being able to call people through a sign language interpreter, or the closed captions weren't there. And now, when you go to the school for the deaf, you have like movies already have the teachers, most teachers are aware compared to a long time ago that they weren't, and, trying to set things up. So the world now is a better place. Things are changing and improving, and, and we feel so privileged here to be able to have these webinars right nowadays to share more about our awareness and how we can reduce listening fatigue.
I would like to thank everybody for making comments throughout the evening. I haven't been able to read them all, but thank you for being here. Thank you for listening to our presentation. And I'm sure that there are interesting questions and comments, and it's really important that we start this discussion. So I know we don't have a lot of time, but I would like to open it up for questions. And with your questions, I do want to do one more poll. So Mana, can you post question number 5? So you can answer question number 5, and then if you have a question, you can post that in the chat, or you can do a raised hand. It looks like my dog's dead. He just like crashed down beside me, and all you can see is this dog just laying there. All right, I just want to check with the host as to how you want to proceed with question answers. Right, with the poll questions, they're hard to answer because I mean, they're all those options happen, but what hits you the most?
Mhm. Julie has a question. Let's just grab it here. It's more common for teachers to use tables in the classroom, and so that there's less chat. How is different ways to incorporate
And do you want me to read the question? I'm sorry.
yes, could you mind?
Okay.
Would you mind?
All right. Um, Teachers are using table talk in their lessons where groups talk to each other at the same time. This is so that we get away from Socratic teaching, which is less engaging. What might be some ways to incorporate simultaneous table talk with deaf students in mainstream classroom?
And we just
So
missed.
with all the things that's going on in the classroom, with all that conversation, with all these group chats and all that, there's just so much auditory stimulation that the deaf or hard of hearing child is lost. For me, it does not work whatsoever.
And if you have a deaf peer in the classroom, usually you don't, because mainstream, there's usually, just one child. But if you do, make sure that the deaf peer is the same signing skills, because the other one, if they don't, it could make the other deaf peer, what's the word I'm looking for? Like at a disadvantage. One could be at a disadvantage. And so, I mean, the deaf community is so small and the options are limited. Like my mom's journey is different. I looked at my mom, like what my goals are as a mom are different than other people. And so most moms are hearing, like I'm lucky that I have two that know sign, but it's tough and it's a hard situation. One other thing that I was thinking about is um, maybe holding something. So the person who holds that can talk. And once they're done, they pass that, whatever that thing is, on to the other person who can talk. We did that in a second grade mainstream class where we had a microphone. And so other people couldn't talk unless you had the microphone. And then once you were done talking, you passed it on, and so it has to be like they just got it from an actual like dollar store and the kids loved it, like they just played with it and had fun. And
Or
so
like a talking stick.
yeah, so it kind of brought that conversation down, and you couldn't be sitting, in one, you couldn't be sitting in one place. You had to follow whoever was signing. That was the
If there was an
interpreter.
interpreter there. Yeah. Right. And Tony, he had talked about the skills and the coping skills and how it applies to adults, and has there been a change? For me, there has been a change, because when I was starting out in school, the only way I could communicate was through an oral approach. Now I have an option. I can sign or I can use spoken English. So I find that I don't have to tolerate things. I feel like I have an escape. I have an alternate option. If I need to call someone, if I feel anxious on the phone because I might not hear them, I can call them and use an interpreter through VRS. And for me, that releases my anxiety. I have an option to communicate. Whereas before, when I only had the one option, that was it.
I would say that my coping skills changed as well. Um, my home and my family, my Zen place was outside. There was so much going on, and I was done. It was right. I'd get home, and I'd be like, "Oh, I'm okay. This is great. This is a place where I could feel relaxed and not stressed." And it was a different kind of stress, yes, but
Right, right. Not a
but the
communication
fa
stress.
the fatigue and trying to figure out what people are saying, and like I think it's unique. I'm so lucky that my children sign, my husband values ASL and he's signed. And sometimes, you know, if my husband and the kids go out, they'll speak. But as soon as they come in the door, they sign. They always sign, even if I'm not at home. The kids, they might not sign, but as soon as I get home, the hands go up. As soon as I leave, they talk, but my husband still signs, which I find is interesting. But what else do I do? Watching a movie. I love watching movies because there's no talk or no thinking. You can just watch TV and just relax. Um,
Right. It's education including deaf in the classroom. Okay, as an educator, the more you include the deaf student and make them a part of your classroom, you'll see the student change their behavior. Like for me, I remember when I was in elementary school, oh, I would say maybe grade three, maybe grade four. And at that time, I had the first FM system that I was able to use. And the principal thought, oh, this is a great opportunity, and would share it with the whole school. There was an assembly, and they called me out on the stage. And I'm like, oh, why do I have to go on the stage? And they're like, Wanda is deaf and she has an FM system. And they're talking about what happens and how you use it. It helps her to hear and understand. And I'm like, what? And they're like, oh, if you're interested, you could try this yourselves. And people like there was a lineup. They wanted to try the equipment. And it's like, Wanda, give me the equipment. So I'm like, okay, here you go. I was giving it to other kids. I know it was well intentioned, but for me, it was so embarrassing. I was so humiliated. I felt like I was outed. And I'm still traumatized by that. I just think of that. Everybody's eyes were on me. I was trying to blend in. I was trying to hide and I was trying to mask. And here I was being singled out. Still traumatizing. And it varies. I mean, you have to be respectful of the child and where they're at.
Yes, Wanda, one key word I think that we learned today is the permission. We have to permit ourselves. And so we have to give students permission. Maybe take that student out beforehand and have that, discussion like we have an itinerant teacher, or, we have Deaf Awareness Month, or maybe Deaf Awareness Week, or today's ASL Day. It's a special day,
Hmm.
so it's important that you acknowledge also the special deaf awareness. Take the deaf student, say, what do you want? What do you want to share? And how can I help? What can I contribute? What would you like me to do? Ask for that permission. And then that's their space and they can do whatever they want. You don't feel like you're overstepping, and maybe they don't want, maybe a kid at a different school feels something different. But I think it's important.
Like, like I said, when I watched the movie, that was the first time I saw captioned, and like the school board and with all the schools, they would gather all of us kids together and have an event where we met other deaf and hard of hearing kids and we could connect. And in those yearly events, social events, we could be on the same playing field. That was also kind of the first exposure to ASL. I mean, some of the hearing teachers were really excited about, they always wanted to sign a song. Wizard of Oz, they chose one of the song, somewhere over the rainbow, they wanted to learn that. And the very much English word order. But I remember everybody learning the signs to that song, that ASL, but it was so intriguing to see that right there and not understanding it, but everybody else was doing that. And it was some kind of like that exposure where I was learning it with my peers. And that was kind of cool. It just hits differently.
Different, yes, but that song was one of the songs that every night I've used to put my boys to bed. Somewhere over the rainbow. Yes. Where the blue
Too
skies. Yes,
funny.
I always sing that every night. That's one of my favorite songs, because it provides hope, and it's, that it has that hope. It's a beautiful story. Thank you for sharing that. Oh, I knew there was a reason why we were connected.
Absolutely. All right. Yeah. Somebody's saying, I wish that schools taught ASL. And with deaf and hard of hearing kids, like it's great, but usually it's all the other kids, the hearing kids that are really curious about it and they're wanting to learn ASL. But it's really empowering the student and have, it's important to have the students involved.
Tony said, I wish there was many more schools that taught ASL, because it looks like we get from the hearing family, sometimes it would be nice if more schools spoke of deaf culture. And you know what? We live in a very capable world. It doesn't matter whether they're deaf or they need a wheelchair or they're blind. Um, we live in a very capable world, unfortunately. We need to change that attitude and we need to find out where to start. And we as parents, you could, maybe ask the principal or ask the school, like to make a board and maybe just pick one topic. And as a parent, put without, your daughter knowing or whatever, I don't know, and how much your daughter would like to see, could be embarrassing, but anyway, just as an awareness. And then the kids can go up and, oh, let's see what's on this board. And maybe the parents can go and visit the school, or, parent teacher night, go and, the parents can take a look at it, and it might impact maybe one, two, or, who knows? And that could go a long way.
Yeah, there's different ways of experimenting and different approaches. And I think it's important that you try different approaches and see what works and what doesn't work. And I see Robin giving us the heads up that we have to soon wrap up this conversation.
Oh, it's so good.
Great discussion.
They had so much to say. Remember when we first started, it was like, oh, this listening fatigue is going to be like, maybe an hour and a half. And we just gave so much. I love this. This was such a great experience.
I think that we could go on for hours. This is a passionate topic that the two of us have lived, and it reaches our hearts in a way that we need to share because we didn't know anything about listening fatigue. We didn't know about cultural identity or American Sign Language. But I'm thinking right now, 2025, we're not talking the 1900s that you keep referring back to, but there's just so many opportunities right now. And I think we need to take advantage of what's out there.
Well, thank you all for having us here, listening to us, and giving us this opportunity to express ourselves. It was nice and a little therapeutic. I just feel it was so therapeutic. Thank you.
And wow, I mean, unpacking this and just kind of some memories that were coming up that I'd forgotten about.
Right? We just go ahead and do it.
Wow. As a hard of hearing person, grew up with that oral approach. Later on, I was involved with the signing class. I was watching the conversation and I was like relating to everything that you were saying, and I could just connect with you. And it's like, oh, I remember that. I remember that. And then people's comments and just totally feeling validated. And I was chatting with some people like, that was my experience. That was my, and it was very inspiring for me. And just to realize the burden that we carry with us and the experience that we've gone through. It's really nice to hear from the two of you and your perspective and what you guys experienced growing up. And I could totally relate to that. But right now, I do need to wrap things up. And if you could switch over to my PowerPoint and share the screen with mine, please, Nana. Okay, where is it? I'm not seeing it. Oh, there it is. So before wrapping up, I do want to ask the audience. We are working as a collective for parents of deaf and hard of hearing children. And I'm just wanting to ask people, is there other topics that you would like us to address on future webinars? So any parents out there that have some suggestions, please send that via the comments or get that information to us on a topic or ideas or some topic you feel that we haven't covered yet and you would really like us to flesh out more. Like make those comments. We would love to hear from the audience. Email us, email us at any time if you have any thoughts later on. We would definitely appreciate hearing from you and what you would like to hear from us. Once again, I would like to thank Wanda and Aaron for your presentation. I'm sure a lot of us really appreciated listening to this different perspective, and we will have that up on the web page, and then we will also have the slides posted. So I want to say thank you for that. I would also like to say thanks to the ASL interpreters. We have Sue and Anne that have been voicing this whole evening. And for those of you who don't realize, Sue and Anne, like there was a voice for each one. Wanda had their own voice, and Aaron had Anne's voice, so they could actually hear the bantering going back and forth. So this is a very natural sounding process. So thank you to the interpreters for doing that. Thank you to Mana for your Zoom wrangling. That was great. And thanks to the parents who came out, the professionals who came out to hear this information. We will be hosting another webinar on Tuesday, May 13th, same time. We're hoping to see you at our next webinar. I just want to make sure I haven't missed anything in the comments. Let me just check the comments. Okay. All right, so lots of information. So you can get the link from our website. So that's where you will find that. Beautiful. And I think this is a good time to say good night and call it a wrap. Thank you for joining us this evening. Good night, everybody. Good night.
Good night.
Thanks for coming out.